I got it. Ready? 3, 2. There you go.
The great Rabbi Ezekiel of Zidichoyev, Rabbi Ezekiel Zidichoyev, one of the greatest tzaddikim of his time, the Rebbe of the Malbim, actually, in Nista. He was a tremendous Talmud Chacham, and he was once talking and learning with the Yeshuas Yankov, one of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim of his generation, his contemporary, and Yeshuas Yankov was so amazed at his genius and his knowledge in Torah, the breadth and scope of his understanding of sugyas, and he said to him, "Why are you going to Lublin?" The great Zidichoyev, that Rabbi Ezekiel of Zidichoyev, used to go to the Chayzer of Lublin, and he said, "Why are you going to the great tzaddik, the Chayzer of Lublin? You yourself are a Rabbi." And he said to him, he tried to give it over in a manner that he could understand. He said to him, "You know, there's a sugya in Eruvin of Ches, a sugya about a particular type of mavoi, and the Gemara discusses, it's a very technically complicated mavoi ha'osik kanadal. It's a hard Gemara to understand, more because of the technical, logistical details." And he said, if you were able to see a live example, an exact replica of the mavoi, of this particular alleyway that needs this particular street, closed street, dead-end street that needs an Erev, if you could see it in live, would you go and see it? Well, of course, he said, I would run to see it. I'm saying this was, this was a once in a life, this would be an incredible opportunity. So he said, I'm able to see Torah live. Torah in its truest form. Wie man lebt Torah. I could see it how you live Torah. That's the way he was able to explain it to the Shus Yankov. There's a doing Torah and there's a living Torah. There's a v'chai bohem, that this encompasses all our chiyas. And when we are able to see a v'chai bohem, a living Torah, it makes an impression on us. We're able to connect and absorb and understand it at the source in an entirely different way. On Shavuot we read Megillas Rus. Megillas Rus gives us, if we read it carefully, it gives us a live image of Torah, of Yiddishkeit, of Midas Tovos, of Anova, humility, tznius, adinus, malchus, kedusha, holiness, zrizas. Every midah is there in its actual source form in such an incredible way. And on Shavuot, we're given an opportunity to connect to it at the source, because we're standing at the foot of Har Sinai. And so we're given a live, practical, real example of Torah, of Malchus, the way it's supposed to be. We read Megillas Rus. There's so much that we can learn from Megillas Rus. I want to take out one, I think, core or key message that we learn from Megillas Rus. There are many reasons why we read it on Shavuos, but we understand that the essential theme of Megillas Rus is the emergence of Malchus Beis David. Elimelech leaves Eretz Yisrael. The Shofet, the leader of Klal Yisrael, abandons Klal Yisrael in order to preserve his own assets, seemingly so at least. And his two children, Machlon and Kilian, marry Moabite women, Rus and Arpa, and it seems to us that everything is lost. There is no hope. It's a very, very dark, despondent time. And yet, somehow or other, we see that the neshamas of Machlon and Kilian have a geula, and they have a tikkun. And from there, even though his wife, even though Rus is a Moabite woman, she becomes the mother of royalty. She becomes the mother, the Eim Habonim Semecha of David HaMelech, the forerunner of the Malchus of Mashiach, of Geula in Klal Yisrael. And the central message and theme is a message of Malchus. The Rebbeinu Shalom told us, in our marriage proposal, the second day of Sivan, the Yom HaMiyuchas, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, "V'atem tihiyu li," and you will be to me as a mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. You're going to be a nation, a mamleches, a kingdom of kohanim, a goy kadosh, a holy, exalted nation. And Rabbi Avram ben Arambam in his Pirush al Torah brings from his father, do you know what it means, mamleches kohanim? We're a nation of priests. We're a nation of kohanim. We're not kohanim. There are kohanim, there are Leviim, and most of us are Yisraelim. We're a mamleches kohanim. We're a nation of kohanim. And he explains that a kohen is a dugma. A kohen is a source of inspiration for everybody. They reflect and represent leadership. And a leader leads by example. We, Klal Yisrael, are a light to the Ummah Ha'olam, to the whole world, because we live the Ratzon Hashem in all its detail. We're the Melech. We're the one that is setting the example, that's connecting. The Kohanim are the ones that are Shlucha d'Rachmana and Shlucha d'Dan, that we connect the upper world and the lower world. We carry a very exalted mission, each and every one of us. The Gemara tells us, Man Malcha, who are the kings? Malcha or Rabbanan. They're the Sorei HaTorah. They're the kings of Torah. And when we received the Torah, we all became Malachim. We became kings. We became HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kings in this world that connects this world to the upper world, his ambassadors. And the Gemara tells us that Klal Yisrael, im lo malachim heim, b'nei malachim heim. Not all of us are the Malka Rabbanan, are the Talmidei Chachamim, and that we embody Torah in all its detail. But nevertheless, it's there. It resonates inside of us. We know that this is where we need to be and where we want to be and who we are at the source. A king is a king is a king. Can't take it away from him. It's dyed in the wool of who we are. Gur Aryeh Yehuda. Lo yoso shevet mi Yehuda choykek mi bein raglav. Yehuda reflects and represents the Malchus of the Jewish people. And that Malchus, he's Kora Rovatz Ke'ari. He's an Gur Aryeh. He's an Ari, he's a lion. Does a lion need to tell everybody, hello, I'm the king of the animal world? Everybody should know, be scared of me. Doesn't have to say anything. He's a lion. He could be lying down for most of his time, but his whole being is majesty. He's the king of the animal world. And so too, we are the kings of the world. We're a mamleches kohanim. It's not something that we have to affirm. It's not something that we have to prove our existence and our right to exist. We know it within ourselves. We're Malchus. Now, how does Malchus reflect itself? How are we able to bring out the trappings, the Ginune Malchus of majesty inside of us? If we look carefully at Yehuda's life from the outside, from a very superficial look, seems to be one long string of tragedy. It seems to be almost a failure to us. Yehuda was destined for greatness. He was chosen by the brothers to be the leader. It was understood that he was the leader, and yet it seems to us he failed. The brothers pinned on him the Mechira, the sin of the Mechiras Yosef. They saw the father was plunged into Avelis and into darkness. And Vayered Yehuda Meisachav, they demoted him. He was no longer the leader. He was rejected. And the Psukim describe Yehuda's life alone. What happened? He marries this Basshua Knani, this seemingly local woman. He has two children, Er and Oinan, and they both are Ra B'Einei Hashem. The Torah doesn't use that word Ra anywhere else. They were Ra B'Einei Hashem. Even a wicked person, a Rasha, in between the oisius of Ra, there's a shin. there's still the potential for shalshalas, for connection, for reconnection. But and Oinen were Rav Vayimisewa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to kill them. There was no tikva, there was no hope for them. Their sins were so terrible. And a father, naturally, what's he going to say? It's me. I gave birth to these children. It's a reflection, a child is a reflection of the father. And then Yehuda's wife dies. Can you imagine? Yehuda's rejected by his brothers. His father's in Avelis. His children die. His wife dies. His life is a closed book. Essentially, he should be a crushed person. A crushed person can't pick themselves up, can't move on. Their wings are clipped. But not Yehuda. Vayinochem. The Torah says Yehuda lived in a state of nechama. He was constantly in a state of rejuvenation. He's going vayal al goizezei soinoi. We don't understand the deeper implications of that. But it means he understood that there's a cycle. There's shearings and there's regrowth. And there he is. And we see and we read in vivid detail, the Torah describes to us the story of Yehuda and Tamar. And afterwards, Yehuda admits his guilt openly. Tzot kol mimeni. He's a source of choler. He's a source of shame, of embarrassment. But Yehuda lives in a zone of oida v'lo evosh. Yehuda is hoida'ah. I'm not going to let the embarrassment of my existence cripple me, paralyze me, hold me back. And Yehuda moves on. And this is reflected, we find, in the words that Yehuda tells his father when he takes responsibility for Binyamin. Nakuma v'nelcha v'nichya v'lo namos. Nakuma, let's get up. We're going to get up. V'nelcha, we're going to move forward. V'nichya v'lo namos. Onochi a'avenu. I'll take responsibility. Malchus is reflected, the Malchus of Yehuda, the Melech HaMashiach, is reflected in that very characteristic. That even if all the odds are against us, and the deck is stacked against us, and it seems like we're walking into a brick wall, but nevertheless, no kuma, we're going to move forward. And we're going to succeed. V'neilcha v'nichya. We're going to move to the light at the end of the tunnel. We read in Megillas Rus, the birth of Malchus David came about through the three primary characters of Megillas Rus: Naomi, Rus, and Boaz. And we read Naomi's life. What a moment of total yish and despair. Her husband has died. So great tzaddikus. Her husband, the Shofet, the greatest of Klal Yisrael, her children are intermarried, it would seem, from the simple reading of the Psukim. She's left with nothing. She's penniless. All her possessions have gone. She's barefoot. The mother of royalty and wealth is there in the land of Moab. To understand what it means to be outside of Eretz Yisrael, David HaMelech says, "Ki givshuni milehistapeach benachlis Yisrael." He tells to Shaul, a Yid that understands what it means to be in Eretz Yisrael and to be in Golus, she's there. There's no hope. She feels condemned, and yet the Psukim describe Vatokom Nomi. She heard Ki Pakad Hashem es Amoy. You know who told her that the famine was over in Eretz Yisrael? The Reichlim, there were Machaz Ba'ayoris. The Chazal, the Midrash tell us that she heard in the grapevine that there's no more famine in Eretz Yisrael, you can come back, it's good. She didn't hear it, that it was just like the economy had turned around, the recession was over. She heard Ki Pakad Hashem es Amoy. And in that she heard a vibration that she too, there's an element of Pekida, it's time to come back. And so against all odds, against all rationale, you suspend all feelings, she picks herself up. Vatokom Nami, what's she going back to? What embarrassment, what degradation to come back. Vatehim Kolair, she walked into Beis Lechem, they were astonished. Hazois Nami. That doesn't deter her. Vatokom. because she's marching to a future. What future? Who does she have? Can she get married? Of course not. She tells Rus, there's no opportunity, no possibility for me. And not for you either. She was a Moabite woman. So what are we going to? It doesn't matter. We're not going to make calculations. We're going back. Malchus, royalty, is something that is inherent and innate to who we are. It's not subject to rationale. We don't have to prove it. We're not looking at the polls. We're not elected. It is who we are. We are Hashem's chosen people. And we move forward. V'tokom. We can always pick ourselves up. Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'kom. There's an element of Malchus inside each and every one of us that even if we're pushed under the waves, even if we're smashing our head against the wall, even if everything seems in certain areas of life incorrigible, we can't change them, we feel doomed in this particular area, that's not going to deter us. We move on. I said over the story before, it's a very, very moving story. Motl Zanetitsky, Muridikiyid, Rabbi Zanetitsky. He had a beautiful family before the war, tremendous family. And everything went up in smoke. His wife, his children in the Holocaust. He remarried in a DP camp. Actually moved to Bnei Brak. He was a Rosh Hashiva of a Imre Emes Yeshiva in Bnei Brak. But many, many Talmidim. Great tzaddik. Rabbi Zanetitsky. And there was someone that described the day of his wedding in this DP camp. It was in Austria, I think it was. And it was in 47. He was about to go to the chuppah, and he was in his room. Everybody was waiting. The Kala was waiting under the chuppah, and he wasn't coming. They sent someone to the room, and they saw Reb Manis sitting at the table with his head down on the table in between his arms. And at first the fellow didn't want to disturb him, but the people are waiting. There's a tirchut tzibura. So he touched him on the shoulder and he said, Manis, everybody's waiting for you. The chuppah is ready. The Masada Kiddushin is there. Are you coming? And he said, the chuppah is there. Oi, the chuppah is there. I had a son, Yosef Moshe, and he was ready for the chuppah, a bacha. The chuppah's there. I had a beautiful family. How can I go to the chuppah? I had Eliezer Elia, I had Leibele, Genendele, Chayele, Shimon Beirish. He reckoned out all the 6 children. I should go to the chuppah. How can I go to the chuppah? And he put his head back down. And then he picked himself up and he banged on the table. Open my gate! We're going. My gate. Vatokom. He went to the chuppah. And in that small vignette, it's a small story, but it's reflective of our entire nation. Klal Yisrael picks itself up. We're a nation of malachim. If we think about what took place after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, how Klal Yisrael, from a few crippled survivors broken from the ashes of such a terrible, terrible tragedy, Klal Yisrael regenerated, rebuilt, rejuvenated itself. How Torah, Yiddishkeit in Israel, in all over the world. We look today, of course we're beset with challenges and problems, but we understand we're a nation that looks to the future. We don't look to the past. We don't allow ourselves to steep in despair, because inside there's a yud. Inside there's a midah of malchus, there's a neshama that fuels and powers our march forward. That yud is beyond reason. That neshamala is not subject to calculations. We don't have to feel rationally and in our emotions that it's right and it makes sense. we connect to a higher force. Boaz. Look at Boaz's life. What a difficult life. He's 80 years old. He's lost 60 children. And the Gemara talks about Rabbi Yochanan who lost 10 children. We talk about great tzaddikim that lost children to Shurim, others, and moved forward. 60 children Boaz lost. His wife had died the day that Naomi arrives in Beis Lechem. Now, normally, a person can move through tragedy when they have a partner in life. They have someone to share and shoulder together a difficulty. You can move on. Boaz should be crushed. Boaz has worked that day in the field. It's a hard day's work. Can you imagine an 80-year-old man? And he's worked in the field in the soirim there the whole day with his workers, and it comes the very end of the day. And he goes to the Goren, and the Psukim describe to us what took place in the granary at that night. Vayoichal, vayesht, vayetav liboy. And Chazal say he ate, he drank. Rus is hiding in the shadows of the Goren. The seed of Mashiach is about to be planted. Boaz doesn't go to sleep. Can you imagine? He must have been exhausted. He had every reason to say, okay, I've done enough. I put in a good day's work. Vayetav liboy. Vayetav liboy b'Torah. He sat and he studied Torah in the middle of the night. And he fused the seed of Mashiach. David HaMelech gets up. B'chatzois laila okum lohoidis lecha. And all of Klal Yisrael followed suit. The Gemara in Brachos tells us that all the Talmidei Chachamim would get up in the middle of the night and sing, because David HaMelech, although he was the lowest on one sense, he was the Dal Shabadalim. David is Dalet, Vav, Dalet. He's considered himself the lowest of the lowest, and he had in many ways the greatest challenges imaginable, internally, externally. And yet he's the highest of the high, because he moves on. He's not subject to reason. You could look at me, you can consider me a mamzer, you can consider me a lo yutzlach, you can consider me a shofech damim. The greatest sorrows imaginable before David HaMelech, and he moves on. Boaz. Vayetav liboy. And for us, it looks almost like the night after he was together with Naomi, together with Rus, and the seed of Mashiach was introduced into the world, he dies. I'm sure many people afterwards were whispering, what a silly thing he did. What a mistake. Rabbi Shem sees it differently. It can look to us, just like with Yehuda, it looks to us at the time, just like with David HaMelech in his lifetime, he had those that were Meranein Achrov. Just like Yehuda, even afterwards, his atzomas were megalgalin in the keva, until Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for him that he should come back El Amri to Vienna. To us, it looks like one way, but in truth, in retrospect, at the end of it all, just like when Mashiach's light shines through, and everything in retrospect will be bathed in light, we realize everything is good. We have to live now with the light at the end of the tunnel. Even though all our senses, living now in the prison of our circumstances, it looks so dark. A melech is not subject to what anyone thinks or what anyone says or whatever wells up inside of themselves. All the forces that pull him down. A melech is fueled with the yud. You find, it's interesting, we say, in the kapitel, beginning of Hallel, David HaMelech praises HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbeinu Shalom is the mashpili liris b'shamayim v'aretz mikimi me'afar dal. All the words end with the yud. Lahishivi im nadivim. The Chida writes that it ends with the yud because it was the yud that saved David HaMelech. His grandmother Rus was really not Roy Lovi Bukal, a Moabite woman. She was from Moab. But Boaz dashened and brought the Geula by dashing a Moab, a person, but not a Moabite woman. Moavi, Veloy Moavis. It was the Yud that saved him. It's a much deeper pshat, really. The Yud is what fuels, what moves forward. We're connected to a Yud, we're connected to the Neshama. That's the pilot, that's the compass that moves forward, not the body. You find Rus, everything in her life was dark, bleak and black. And she could have gone back to her father's home, to wealth, to luxury, to be pampered. And yet she says, no, I'm moving forward. Kasher telchi elech, where you walk, I walk. Kasher telini olen, amech ami elekach elekoi. And we read Rus. She has nothing to go to. She's a Moabite woman that hadn't yet been established that she was Roy Lover Bokal. What's she going to? Where's she going? For why? For what? There's a spark. The nitzutz of Melech HaMashiach is the nitzutz that lies inside each and every one of us. The spark of godliness that transcends rhyme and reason. We know we're connected. We are who we are. Hashem loves us. We'll move forward come what may. Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kam. There's a Nakuma. We're going to move forward. Live in such a dark and difficult generation. And everyone, each and every one of us, faces challenges. And sometimes our challenges seem insurmountable. They seem so difficult. Shavuot is where we reaffirm our Shavuot. We're Nishba. We're one. Shavuot is from the word Sheva. It can be Sheva Yipro. It transcends reason. It's an oath. HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore to us and we swore to him. And ultimately, the revelation will be revealed. David HaMelech's yahrzeit is Shavuot. Why did he die on Shavuot? Because he left us a living legacy. David HaMelech didn't have any schus chaim. All his years were taken from Adam Arishan. David HaMelech, his whole metzias was dal shabadalim. Shiraim of Shiraim. Rav Tzadok writes that David HaMelech's nefesh was the achroinu shebe'ekev. He had the most difficult challenges. And yet he moved on. Our commitment to the Rebbeinu Shalom transcends reason. It's one of Naaseh v'nishma. And when we implement that in our own lives, and we move forward, it comes the night of Shavuos, we sit and we learn. It's against, we're reliving Boaz. It's against our rationale. It's nice to be able to go to sleep. And the Yitzhara comes and says, you know what, if you sleep tonight, you'll be able to be fresh tomorrow. And we're tired. After all, Shavuos is a little bit about the Chatzi Lachem. But nevertheless, we suspend reason. We're connected intimately with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the essence, the underlying theme of Shavuos. Our connection to Torah and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon is undying. And then we'll move forward, we'll march forward, and we'll be zocha to the Or, the Neshama, that will pilot us forward, even if our feelings are not there, even if our emotions are not there, even if sometimes it doesn't make sense. We'll move forward and we'll be able to come from the Choshech to an Or Gadol. We'll be zocha to the Or Shal Mashiach of David HaMelech being restored b'mher b'yamin.
Amen.
Good Shabbos.
Okay, good Shabbos. I don't know how long it was, but 28 minutes. Fine. Thank you, guys. We spoke about it a little bit. There were other things to say, but it's okay. You can only say so much. Whatever was supposed to be said was said.
That's not
Yeah,
Stop.
please.
I think you pressed it.
Yeah, I started.
Good. Okay, onwards bound, everybody. If you can bring the camera in my room, and send it, show Mrs. Kirschner come where
Here 5 minutes from that time.
For your video.
Yeah,
Torah.